Hi, my name is Janet Sitt, and the title of my piece is An Imperfect Herding of Ions for this year's Pivot Mentorship Program. It's about 10 minutes long. That's what it says on my notation software, so I might be a little bit off. It's about 10 minutes. So I have a background in science along with my musical training, and a part of my brain is always thinking about how to integrate science or scientific approaches into my creative practice. At this point, sort of, I'm interested in also sound art, sound installation. So I'm also always thinking about where and when a piece and sort of where is it located, when is it located, what are the environments around the piece that when I'm gonna start playing and sketching. And so in this sort of piece, thinking about the ions, more specifically, sort of ions in something. And so the inspiration for this piece came from thinking about where this will be played. In this case, it was going to be played in a venue that was really close to an intersection. And having grown up in Toronto, I always kind of have listened to the cars of sounds of streetcars, sounds of streetcars and the sounds of subway trains, especially when it's going around the Young University Line loop, or when you're going to, let's say, the CNE, the streetcar will come in sort of screeching in as it comes into the tunnel. So I was thinking about sort of reflecting on my memories of growing up in Toronto and taking the subway, taking the streetcars. This is before the light rail. And so all these kind of sounds were the memories of these sounds were in my head. And this kind of phrase, an imperfect herding of ions, came from a quote from a book called Metazoa and is by Peter Godfrey Smith. And the quote says, in cells, the process of life involves imparting order upon a molecular storm and the imperfect herding of ions. So I was thinking about the ions in this case inside the streetcar tracks and how they're sort of floating around. But when the electrical currents come through, especially in the older streetcars, and you have the grid above you, and every time it goes through, you'll hear like a chunk, 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 chunk. So I was thinking about those sounds when I was writing this piece and trying to imagine the world of these ions as it's sort of bouncing around and floating around in the track plates. And that's actually part of the piece. There is a percussion instrument that is basically a piece of metal plate. Um, and so I was thinking about all the different sounds of metal and metal on metal, metal screeching, sort of metal being activated by electrical currents in this case for the streetcar and the whole transit system. And so, sort of the musical aspects of musical language is more about layering of sounds and the timbral layering, timbral blending, and what those combinations might sound like. I know that there is a teeny tiny bit of spectralism, but I'm really mostly interested in sort of these timbres of these different instruments. And so I was looking for lots of metal sounds or metallic sounds or sounds that kind of convey a sense of metallicness. And that's what I would like to have the listeners listen to, or invite the listeners to sort of think about maybe the sounds that you're going to hear in this piece, all the different sort of instruments and the metallic parts of the instruments, and then also listen to the sounds in the environment. And so if you're listening to this in a live performance, you're hearing the space of these in which these sounds are being played, and also sort of the outside space outside the venue. And if you were to listen to this as a recording afterwards, and maybe listening to it with headphones, but also sort of being mindful of the space around it. I'm not sure how that would work with noise cancellation headphones. That's a really good question that I was just thought about. So that's sort of the sound world I'm working with. It's about ions, about metal, about history and memories of growing up in Toronto and like being on these streetcars all the time. And I think that's about it. Thank you.